So oftentimes we don't know what we're getting ourselves into by tackling these big mountainous projects until we are already in it. So to that end, I decided to make this video of 3 lessons that I learned from my first finished story, because that really taught me a lot. And when I say my first finished story, I really mean the first self-published work that I put out. Not really all of the things that came before it, but mostly just that entire book that I really spent most of my energy in to that point. So number 1, the first lesson that I learned is that it will change. The story may stay the same at its core, but the flow will change over time, and that's okay. Let it guide you. Let the story guide you where it needs to go and do what it needs to do, say what it needs to say. Because if you force it into that first vision that you had when you sat down to write, it's going to come off very taut. It's going to come off extremely stiff. And you don't want that. You want it to flow. You don't want it to be so within this box that you've placed in your mind that you don't let it grow into its own thing. So that's number 1, is that it will change over time. It may even change draft to draft. It may even evolve into something that you weren't even prepared to take on. Maybe you weren't ready to speak about a certain episode in your life or in a character's life, if it's fiction. But the story led you there. And so when that happens, let it do what it's got to do. And embrace it and just tackle it with glee, because that's what writing is really all about. Sometimes we have to let these characters take on a life of their own, do their own thing. They will guide us into their next adventures. Lesson number 2 is that it will never, ever be perfect. Be content with what's there and know when to stop. Know when to stop the editing process and back away from it. Because if you keep changing it and changing it and changing it until your idea of what you think it should be, like we just said, and you want it to be perfect in every single aspect, and you keep changing it and messing with it, it will lose its initial fire. We have to know when it's okay to say enough, because we are our worst critics. We are the toughest on us. It probably isn't as bad as you think it is. And if it really is something that's weighing on your mind, let other people read the draft, send it out, get feedback on it, and then change it into something even better, but know when to step back, because it will never be perfect. There is no perfect book out there, right? I mean, everything is so subjective at the end of the day, but every piece of art, whether it's a book, a movie, a painting, could still be worked on and could still be built up into something different. That doesn't mean it'll be better. That does not mean that it will sharpen it even more so to the point that it's trying to make. Sometimes we just have to say, okay, I'm content with what's there on the page. It says what I came to say, and that is enough for me at this point with this project. Now, the third lesson that I learned, it's the one that surprised me most. Once you do finish this story and you have purged yourself so much to the point where you are emaciated, emotionally emaciated, and you sit back and you realize that it has offered immense closure, the type you didn't even know you needed. That is the third lesson that I learned. It offers immense closure, and I am so grateful that I found certain closure through that project, because there were certain aspects of it that were so deep and held such deep emotional wounds. And once I got them out and on the page, I just felt this weight off my shoulders release and just was okay with everything. So it's not like you give these wounds eternal life. It's more so like you make them real, and through that, you can expel them from your mind where they have stayed for so many years. And once we can put them out into the atmosphere, they're not ours to carry anymore by ourselves. You know, we can let the world in. It is not yours to carry on your own anymore. And that's a beautiful thing, because then other people can relate to you through their own episodes, through their own stories. They look at you and read your story and say, okay, I have been through something similar and I didn't know the exact emotions I felt until I read them in your book. And it's just inspirational all around. It is an all around win. So those were the three lessons, the three major lessons that I learned from my first finished story, which I really am thankful for to this day. They taught me things that I used for my second story. My second story taught me things that I took into my third story, and so on and so forth. That's how it works, I feel like, right? You always are learning. You're always trying to get better and get to the next step. And the only way to get to the next step is through the current step. And that's just one of those things that you can apply to anything in life. It just so happens that we're talking about writing right now. So with all of that said, like this video if you felt something, comment with what you thought, and I will see you next Sunday at the midnight hour.